Thanks very much, Stephen, and thanks everybody for taking the time out of the Thursday evening to join us here. Um, my name is Laura Keeley. I'm a registered health and performance nutritionist, and I'm going to spend the next 60 minutes or so taking you through a broad range of different nutrition topics. So, kind of an introductory area to several different nutrition subjects. I'm sure you've heard of a lot of them, but essentially what I'm focusing on for the next hour or so is nutrition for optimal health. So what does that mean? What is wellness? What do we need to focus on? And the different facets and the areas of that. Looking at kind of balancing eating, trying not to be one extreme or the other, essentially. And then what do we need to actually fuel our bodies? What foods do we focus on? Do we prioritize? Then looking at nutrition as we change, or excuse me, nutrition as we age, what changes? Where does the focus need to shift? And again, it's just going to be an introductory, I suppose, segment on that topic, because there's a lot of information in that. So I'll just be introducing it tonight. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on healthy eating on a budget, why you don't need to spend, hundreds of euros every week on the most organic superfood from South America that doesn't really exist. And then I want to talk about sleep, why it's the forgotten pillar of health, and how to improve your sleep health as well. Then we'll be looking at a couple of things like habits and mindfulness. So there is a lot to cover, and I appreciate for some people, you may have heard of some of the stuff I'm going to talk about. For others, it'll all be brand new, but hopefully you'll pick up a couple of takeaways going after tonight's webinar that you're able to apply directly as soon as you walk into the kitchen, basically, is what I'm hoping. So do ask questions, pop them in the chat box, and I'll get to them at the end, and I'll stay on for as long as necessary to answer everyone's questions. I'm happy to do that. And no questions too small, no questions too silly. I guarantee I've been asked it before, probably twice. So sit back and enjoy, folks, and let's get started. So looking at your wellness, people often think that health is kind of what size you are, or what you weigh, or how fast you can run, or if you play sports or something like this. It isn't. Our wellness and essentially our health is made up of a lot of things. Okay, everything from, yes, how physically healthy we are, yes, what do we eat nutrient wise, but also different things like our emotional health, our social health, our mental health, of course, and we all know how important that is these days, thankfully. Our environment is a big player as well, and one thing that isn't there is also financial health. So don't just think that if I'm X weight I'm healthy, or the fact that I started running 5Ks in the last lockdown I'm healthy. There's a lot of different elements to your health, and I suppose what I really want to get across there is you need to appreciate each one of them, okay? And you need to be mindful of each one of them and understand that they do exist. I suppose where I'm more kind of, qualified to talk about is obviously nutrition. But we will discuss exercise and its importance and why we need to move, okay? And also about mindfulness, because when we look at our health, we can't just look at it in isolation. We need to look at all the facets, okay? So again, reiterating that being healthy does not mean just being physically healthy. We need to be aware of the other elements and how they all play a part. And you'll notice that, if you can implement some new healthy eating habits, that daily movement actually comes along a little bit easier with it, because it's a case of I'm going to get out for my walk, and then I've got all the ingredients in my fridge to make a really healthy and nutritious dinner. Or I'm going to take 10 minutes stroll and just do a little bit of mindfulness away from my family, if you can, and have a little bit of quiet time, and then I'm going to go back and make my dinner, make my lunch, or something like this. They tend to be quite tied in with each other as well. So let's look firstly at nutrition, and again, a very, very basic explanation of what it is, and kind of definition of what it is. It's nutrition is everything we eat, so our food and our water, okay, and the different components of that. And via our nutrition we maintain our health, okay? So we know that our body needs certain nutrients in order to be healthy, to have energy, to ensure that all of our organs are functioning correctly. And this all comes from our food and our hydration, okay? So it's just to kind of think of it in a little bit of an objective way of what actually food is for us. Now, it's lots of other things as well. We know food's tradition, we know food is comfort, we know food is sociable, but just looking at in terms of like physically and what does it do for our bodies, we look at that area. So look at that, what does it do for our bodies? Okay, so we know that when we eat or what we eat fuels our body, and it repairs and refuels our body as well. So we know that, you know, if we get a muscle strain, or if we're very tired, if we have some food, that we're going to have a little bit more energy. And then overall, over a long period of time, what we eat and drink will determine how healthy we are as well, because food and nutrition has a compound effect on our body. So, you know, the choices we make, they don't just, you know, if we eat a very nutritious diet for 24 hours, we know that's not going to have a massive long-term impact on our health. But if we can eat healthily and eat nutritiously 80% of the time, over a long period, it means that will, I suppose, set us up for good health in the long run. So the idea is, it's not just about short-term fixes, that food, the effects of our food build up over time. And then kind of conversely, if you look at, if we have a low nutrient diet, if we don't get the vitamins and minerals and different things our body needs, and we do that over a long period of time, then we see the ill effects of poor nutrition. So it's just to bear in mind that it's more of a compound effect rather than a short-term one. And when we look at nutrition goals, okay, so everybody, say if you do want to make a change in your diet, or you'd like to improve your diet, when I talk to people and when I talk to clients, they tend to have different goals. And one of them, possibly, hopefully, will be health. So they'll want to improve their diet in order to be healthier. And that's brilliant. That's what I love to hear, because if that's that's someone that is being mindful and is aware that food impacts them long term, so they want to eat healthier for their own health. Another reason why people might come to me is for performance. So on the sports side of things, or even on the personal exercise of things, that they want to increase a 5K time, or they want to get out and maybe walk 10K and be able to do that. So that's another goal that they might have. Now, the big one that I would often see is body composition. So people would have a body composition goal, such as to reduce their body fat, to increase muscle, and so forth. The reason why I bring this up, and I suppose the point of me having it here, and I'll get my little pointer out, is that people often want to do two of these at the same time, and potentially sometimes when I work with different athletes, even three. Now, issue with this, because when you want to achieve multiple goals with a dietary change, it makes it that little bit harder. Okay, so for instance, if someone comes to me and they want to lose some body fat, but they also want to eat the healthiest diet they can, they're trying to achieve dual goals here, and that will put a little bit of pressure on them, because it may not give them the leeway that they need to have a less restrictive diet. So it may restrict what they're eating, and then that will kind of set them up for getting fed up with their healthy eating quite quickly. So I suppose trying to achieve all three, I don't recommend. Even two at a stretch, I would say do it under the supervision of someone, or do it under guidance of a professional, but do maybe just try and pick one at a time and do it slowly when you are choosing your nutrition goals. So let's look at the very, very basics, the essential nutrients of life. And I'm sure everyone's heard of everything that I have up here right now. So you're looking at things like your fat, protein, and carbohydrates. So they're called macronutrients. And again, don't worry about the different terminology, or so some people may not have heard of these at all. So macronutrients are your fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Your micronutrients, then, guys, we have vitamins and minerals. Okay, so they're micronutrients, and we need them in very, very small amounts. And then two we have separate here: water, obviously, for hydration, and then we have roughage. So that's fiber. Now, fiber, not to confuse things, fiber is a component of carbohydrate, but the reason why fiber gets its own little area is because of how important it is in our diets, and I'm going to talk about that in a couple of slides. But essentially, this slide here, these components are what makes up food. Okay, so again, I'm sure you've all heard of these terms in some form or another, but it's just to make it quite simple. These are what nutrients are. If you ever hear of different nutrients in foods, we're talking about these. Okay, So this is what makes up your food. Now, what's recommended, looking at on a numbers level for fat, carbohydrate, and protein, and these are the three macronutrients in our foods. Okay, again, I'm sure you've all heard of these. It's recommended that fat make up 25% of your calories, that carbohydrates make up about 50, so the majority of your calories come from carbohydrate, and then protein roughly makes up the other 25. Okay, and then we have some more specific recommendations here. Now that means kind of nothing to the regular Joe soap, because anybody would look at that and say, well, I don't even know how many calories I'm eating, so how am I meant to know what percentage of that is fat? So this is where we run into a real roadblock with people, because they look at that and it means pretty much nothing to them. So when you look at this practically, well, we kind of would use something like this, the Eat Well plate, where when I'm talking to very simply to people, I would say, if we're taking, say, this is your dinner plate, now remove the fruits, because obviously, without being a bit pedantic, we wouldn't have too much fruit with dinner. So half of your plate should be vegetables. Okay, if we look at it really, really plainly, looking at the majority of your plate being covered with veg, and that's because vegetables are incredibly healthy for us. They're high in fiber, they're high in vitamins, high in minerals, and our body needs them. Okay, so when we have diets high in veg, we know that we are at lower risk of very low risk of heart disease, of stroke, of diabetes. We've high energy, our body's functioning very well. So we need to make sure that we're eating lots of veg. And the idea would be to have 2 portions of veg with lunch and 2 to 3 with dinner, or however way you like it, about 5 portions of veg in total. And you're looking for about a fistful size of vegetables. If you think about using your fist is a really good guide, about 2 to 3 fistfuls or 2 fistfuls of each type of veg, we'll say, on your plate. And then looking at your protein about the size of your palm of your hand. So, chicken breast about the size of your palm of your hand, or piece of fish, or a lean piece of beef, or whatever it is you like. And then whole grains then on the other quarter of the plate. So, the good old Irish way of filling up half a plate with spuds, and then, maybe a couple of pieces of broccoli, and then a good big slab of a steak, or a big pork chop or something. We need to just adjust that slightly. Okay, so it would be a case of just reducing the potatoes a little bit. I know potatoes, they're not classed as a vegetable, even though they technically are. But when it comes to healthy eating, we need to focus on more colorful veg, we'll say. So like that, again, if you're having like a chicken curry and like the whole plate is rice, try and reduce that. We're talking more veg, adequate protein from your meat or your plant sources of meat if you're vegetarian, and then reducing those whole grains to a quarter, and making sure kind of going for whole grain varieties of your carbohydrates. So whole wheat pasta, whole grain rice, and lentils, quinoa, things like that for your grains. So that's kind of what you want to look like. It's a good guide to go by. So I always kind of think, and then your grains, we're going for 1 to 2 fistfuls. Now, obviously, comparing a small woman to a bigger man is a bit silly. So obviously it's subjective to the person as well, and what fills you. But just having that rule of loading up with veg is a really good one to go by. So looking at it kind of on a list, because this is a question I would get asked a lot is, Laura, how do I eat healthy? And people want a very straightforward answer, and there's often not a straightforward answer. But looking at the general rules, or the general, I suppose, guidelines that I would give people to go by would be to eat breakfast. Now, if you're someone that doesn't like breakfast and you work absolutely fine without it, and it either makes you sick, or you've never done it, it's not something that suits you, that's fine. But I often find that people that skip breakfast and don't make time for it then get very hungry around 11 o'clock. And next thing you know, you're on a caramel latte and 2 croissants. And, it's just not the optimal way to get your nutrients in early in the day. So if you can prioritize a good balanced breakfast, and I'm going to practically show you an example of how to put one of those together, or put a few of them together actually in a little while. If you can prioritize that, you're just setting yourself up for better eating throughout the day. Because straight away, if you can focus on getting enough protein, some some fruit in that morning, and some slow releasing carbs, you're kind of better set up for the day. So I would say to prioritize eating breakfast, okay? Preparing 80% of your snacks and meals at home. Now, this isn't that hard to do anymore, obviously, with being on lockdown number 3, but a good rule going forward when we do get back out into the real world again is preparing a lot of your stuff at home. Now, if you know that you make very healthy choices outside the house, that's fine. I often find with clients they don't. When you're in a shop, it's very easy to get distracted, and it's very easy to say, oh, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have that. So being a little prepared can help you eat healthier in the long run. So again, fruit and veg, and I'll be like a parrot about these for the next while. I cannot stress how important it is for us to eat our fruit and veg. And again, I'm sure you've heard it before, but it's the simple things that work long term, the simple things that keep us healthy. So at 4 to 5 portions of vegetables a day. Go by the fist rule. This is one I always get asked, like, what is a portion? What is technically a portion? Look, if it's about the size of your fist, it's a portion, okay? And then 2 to 3 portions of fruit a day. Again, we'll go with the fist size again. So aiming for those, spread them throughout the day. If you really struggle, to get this in, start with smoothies. You know, fire in a few bits into a Nutri Bullet, and if that's the way you're going to get it, it's better than nothing, okay? And then eating regularly throughout the day. Again, if you're someone that you know can go for 5-6 hours and you don't get hungry, and that's how you like to eat, that's fine. I'm not saying this is a rule. Again, it's a guideline. If you find that you don't prioritize your snacks, you don't time your meals, and then you don't eat for 6 hours, you're ravenous, and then you know you've got all the makings of a very nutritious meal in the fridge, but you're already picking up the phone to get the takeaway because you just couldn't be bothered, you're too hungry. Letting yourself get to that stage is an issue if it means you're making poor choices. So when you prioritize, when you say, I'm going to have breakfast at 8, my snack at 11, lunch at 1, snack at 3, dinner at 6, and snack at 8. You know, that's regular eating. You're not letting yourself get hungry. When you don't let yourself get to that point, you can make a more nutritious choice. We all know when you get hungry and you open the fridge and, you know, you can have an option there of a yogurt, but then you see a chocolate bar in the back and you're starving. So you're going to go for the chocolate bar. You're going to go for that less nutritious option. Eating things like lean meats, of course. If you're not a meat eater, then prioritizing protein intake via your plants. But lean meats, healthy fats, whole grains. So we're talking about those high fiber whole grains as well. Now, what we try to avoid, again, this isn't like, oh, you can never, ever have it, but it's just to reduce that this area here has to be the 80% of your diet, and this area here is going to be your 20, okay? So again, skipping meals, leaving long periods between time when you're eating out regularly. So if it's leading to poor choices, and then regularly eating high processed foods or ready meals. And this is purely because more often than not, they're very low in nutrients, so very low in vitamins and minerals. And they can be very high in things like saturated or trans fats, high in salt, and just not going to give us what we need, okay? And then mainly consuming like that low nutrient foods. Alcohol, I'm going to come to towards the end, so I won't make too much of it. So when we're looking like, well, okay, that's the list of guidelines. Well, how does it look practically? Okay, so it is more of this good stuff here. So look at that, look at the color. You're talking your lean meats, whole grains, all right? So whole grain bread, loads of different colors and fruit and veg. Look at all that. So like thinking of lots of different plants, loads of color variety there, your fruits. And then we look at pulses and legumes. So things like quinoa, all your different kinds of beans, tinned beans, fine. I'm talking tinned chickpeas, butter beans, kidney beans, all perfect, all a really good addition to your diet. Legumes, lentils, quinoa, all super healthy, okay, full of nutrients, full of fiber, some plant protein there as well. And then we've got our healthy fats. So I'm sure we're all over that whole, you know, fat is bad for us fiasco of the 80s and early 90s. Fat's very good for us, just we need the right kind of fat, okay? We need fat to be healthy, we need fat for our brains to function, for our bodies to function well. So looking at things like oily fish, avocado, again, nuts, seeds, extra virgin olive oil, olives, all of those are really, really good additions of fat to our diet. We should have them a couple of times a day, excuse me. And again, we like the other side of things is less of this. So less of deep fried foods. So deep fried foods, not good for us. Very high in trans fats, very high in saturated fat as well. Saturated fat we can have in small amounts. Again, I'm not going to get too much into it, but we can have obviously very, very low nutrient. We tend to overeat on them. They tend to be quite high in calories, high in salt. Doesn't bring much to our diet, okay? And then obviously things like crisps, bars, and high sugar drinks. Now, I'm not saying for a second we need to cut these out and never have them again. That's ridiculous, because, you know, I would never do that. I don't think there's a nutritionist or dietitian in the world that completely gives up everything. You need to find a balance in your life. You need to think of it as 80% of the time you're having this, and I'll touch on this a couple more times, but you're focusing mostly on this, and this is very occasional. Okay, there's no issue having them. You don't undo all of this by having some of this, okay? It doesn't work like that. It's just you appreciate it for what it is. It's low nutrient, very tasty, I'm gonna enjoy, but it's not something that I have regularly or a few times a day throughout my week. Because these foods are called high calorie, calorie dense, hyper palatable foods. Now, it's a fancy way of saying that they're they're high in calories and that they're super, super tasty. So hyper palatable means just that the way they're formulated, they just send our taste buds into a frenzy. So they're high fat, they're high sugar, they're high salt, which is a combination of all three usually, which basically makes our brains just start sparking and we completely overeat on them. I don't know about you, but if you ever open a big bag of Doritos, you never just have like 3 or 4, you end up having 4 or 5 handfuls or even more. We've got this hand to mouth drive from these foods. They're very, very cleverly formulated. Remember, like there's massive big companies putting these together, and they're designed for you to eat them and want to eat them again and again. So again, kind of appreciating them for what they are, having them occasional. Again, highly processed. They don't offer much in the way of health benefits, and that's what we have to appreciate them for. That they're not really gonna make us feel good or give us lots of energy or give our body the micronutrients it needs to be healthy and be fit. They provide very short energy as well. So again, looking at things like high sugar drinks, like minerals and Coke and Fanta and Pepsi and whatnot. You'll have one of those and you'll feel great for about maybe 10 minutes, and then you'll have a bit of a crash, and that's just because it's high sugar. Our body turns it over very, very quickly. Whether if you had a big bowl of porridge, you'd stay full for a very long time, you'll have very slow releasing energy. So it's a case of, again, appreciating these foods for what they are and understanding that you don't need them every day, and it's having them on occasion and focusing that way. This would be what I've been doing here is kind of flexible eating, and it's called the 80-20 approach. So the idea is that you don't try and eat the most healthy food at all times, and that's what I'm sure a lot of people are doing. It's New Year's, New Year's resolutions. I'm going to cut out all the junk. I'm going to cut out all the fizzy drinks. I'm going to cut out all chocolate. It's not a realistic approach to your food, because what does that mean? Are you never going to eat chocolate again? It's unlikely. If you set that kind of rule for yourself, what happens is that you simply more than likely will just fail. You're setting yourself up for failure, and then you feel like a failure and you'll probably overeat on the chocolate rather than just, including it in your diet, appreciating it for what it is, but focusing 80% on healthy foods, fitting in the occasional low nutrient food or high calorie breakfast or whatever it is, but just ensuring that you're not restricting yourself. Okay, because a lot of people think that that's what healthy eating is, and it simply isn't. Healthy eating is not about not eating low nutrient foods. And I don't know if you've noticed me calling these foods, I haven't used the term good or bad when it comes to food, and that's intentional. I'd like that to be something that you take away from this seminar, is that please stop referring to foods as bad or crap or whatever it is, or eating muck, or people have different ways of saying when they're enjoying different foods. Don't call food good or bad. Just say it's either it's high nutrient or it's low nutrient, or it's getting to that stage is really important, because as soon as you stop thinking of foods as bad, it means that when you eat that food, you don't feel bad. So when you if you think, oh, chocolate's bad, but I'm going to eat it, then I'm bad. And we have to get away from that mindset, okay? Because there's absolutely no issue with having these kind of foods, just keeping them on occasion. So let's look at how to actually fuel our bodies. Okay, so I talked about carbohydrates. The recommended intake is about 50% of your calories. So 50% of everything you eat should be from carbohydrates. These are the carbohydrates I want you to focus on. Okay, so I want you to focus on these are nutrient dense carbohydrates. You've things like, you've got spuds in there, you've got sweet potato, whole wheat pasta, whole grain rice. Okay, so the lentils I spoke about. We've got couscous, quinoa, porridge. You're talking, so a couple of fistfuls with every meal. If you're a bigger person, or if you've got a bigger appetite, try another fistful there. It's just a guideline. So we want to aim for those slow releasing carbs. So this is why we kind of avoid like high sugar cereals in the morning if you can, and going for a whole grain version, just because you'll find, I know myself, I have a bowl of cornflakes in the morning, I'm starving at 10:30. Okay, so it's just because we've got a quicker turnover. We tend to eat more of them as well. But if we stuck to things like Weetabix or shredded wheat, or porridge, kind of better options for your breakfast in the morning. Slow releasing carbs, more nutrients. So there's kind of some ideas on how to fuel your body. On that kind of vein as well, looking at high fiber. So I touched on fiber at the start. Fiber is really, really important in the diet. It reduces several types of cancer when we get enough. It improves our heart health. It improves our gut health. So fiber, I'm sure you've all heard of probiotics, big buzzword now. We all should be taking probiotics. Not necessarily, but that's just, what you hear on social media and such. Fiber is a prebiotic. So it actually feeds the good bacteria in our gut, and that's what we have to focus on. So there's lots of different reasons why we need fiber in our diet, but that's another one added. Okay, so the average Irish person gets about 18 grams of fiber a day. That's not enough, because we actually need about 30. So I've given some examples here of fiber, but if you focus on getting lots of fruit and veg in your diet and the whole grains I just spoke about, you'll hit your targets. Okay, so you'll hit those targets for fiber, and you'll know by your own digestive health. Okay, so if you're struggling with constipation or you don't have regular bowel movements, then do make sure you're getting enough fiber in your diet, like nuts, seeds, high fiber cereals, lots and lots of veg, beans, peas, pulses, everything like that. If you find out, don't go wild. I mean, don't go from having little fiber to having 40 grams, because your stomach won't thank you for that either, and you'll have the adverse reaction of it. So ease yourself into it. If you know that you're not eating a veg, bump them up by just a couple a day. Okay, try different things, but don't go to the other extreme of it either. Moving on, then, looking at strength. Okay, so we're talking about protein. The recommendations in around 1.2 to 2 grams. The baseline is about 0.8 grams per kilo. So when you see this on the screen, folks, it means just per kilo of body weight. Now, if you don't know what weight you are in kilos, just go and find out. There's 6.6 kilos in a stone. So you'll be able to roughly do the maths on that. But if you're trying to lose weight or gain muscle, you go for the higher end of this. Okay, so if you're 70 gram, I'm pulling that number out of the air. Okay, if you're 70 kilograms and you're trying to lose weight, you'd go for 140 grams of protein a day. Again, it's a very arbitrary number if you've no idea how many grams of proteins in food, so bear with me, okay? Because I've often been, that's just a number to people. It's not really, it doesn't mean anything unless you know what's in your food. So the important thing to remember is that needs can be met through a well-balanced diet. Protein supplements are so popular these days. We've all gone mad for protein. I saw protein crisps in the shop last week and I was just baffled. We don't really need to supplement with it. You don't need to buy expensive protein bars, and you don't need to, get high protein cereal or any nonsense like that. We can get plenty of protein in just regular, plain, I suppose whole foods we'll call them, okay? So look at chicken breast. I always go for lean meats, things like chicken breast, turkey, and oily fish like salmon. You can go whitefish either, really, really good option for protein. There's lots of high protein yogurts around these days, which is great. They weren't around years ago. So there's lots of different varieties. You can get Quark as well. So the Glennis ones, you can get cheap. I know these are kind of a little bit more, well, they're not more expensive. They're probably around €2, €2.50, but if you go to Aldi or Lidl, you can get them for about half price. So do check them out. You can get, so the Quark is very, very good, and the high protein regular yogurts. And then like things like plain old milk. Milk is super high in protein. It's full of nutrients. It's really good for rehydrating after sports or exercise. It's actually one of the best recovery drinks there are. If you're plant-based, you can go with things like corn or lentils or beans or just plain, or tofu as well, paying particular attention to making sure you're getting enough protein. If you are vegetarian or vegan or doing veganry, a lot of people going vegan this month as well. It's a new trend. So making sure you're paying particular attention to this nutrient protein, okay? Then you've obviously got things like tin tuna. Tin tuna is fine to have. Sticking to about 3 portions a week. That's probably what's recommended. Not going much above that. But just making sure you're focusing on this nutrient, and you're getting enough during the day, and you're getting enough through your meals as well. And you know, if you find that you've roughly worked it out and you don't think you are getting enough, just pumping in a couple of snacks, pint of milk at the end of the day will bring up your protein intake as well. Looking at hydration, a couple of I suppose a couple of rules that I have around hydration, because everyone has, you know, we need to drink X amount of water a day. How much water you need is going to depend on you. Okay, it's not, you can say a rough guide of 2 liters per day, but you know, if you drink 2 liters a day and find that you're actually going to the toilet a huge amount, you'd probably I'd probably recommend, you know, not cutting back a little bit. But a good rule to have straight away is to hydrate before you caffeinate. Okay, so what I like to do is keep a bottle of water beside me, beside my bed, so when I wake up in the mornings, you know, I take back 3 or 4 big mouthfuls, and straight away I know I'm hydrated. Because after you've slept, you're going to be dehydrated. You've had a fast. Hopefully you had a good 8 or 9 hour fast. I know some people don't sleep that long, but you know, getting some water into you before you go for the coffee or the tea. Now, coffee and tea do contribute to our hydration. It was once thought they didn't, but they do. But it is kind of not better, but I suppose caffeine can take kind of hunger and thirst off you as well. So it's just kind of bringing in a nice rule of getting a few hundred mils of water into you before you have your coffee, and then that's a good habit to build then thereon. If you want to find out what you probably need for yourself, looking at 1 liter per 25 kilos of body weight. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's about 1 liter for every 4 stone. So, you know, if you're 12 stone, aim for in around 2 or 3 liters of water. If you're eating like this, we'll come back to this point again of fruit and veg. If you're eating a high fruit and veg diet, you're going to get loads of hydration from those, okay? So if you're into your salad veg, or you're eating 3 portions of fruit a day, you're going to get lots of hydration via that as well. So that's, you know, it all contributes, okay? If you're someone that doesn't like drinking water, and it's just, you've tried for years and it's just like, I just can't get into it, don't like it, just get a drop of sugar-free cordial. There's nothing, my body, just no issue at all. If it means that you're going to drink more and stay hydrated, that's fine, okay? So just a little drop into it, and it'll drive it'll increase that drive to drink. And then, of course, if you are getting back into exercising in the new year, or you know, you're starting to run or something like that, do be mindful of increasing that fluid consumption afterwards. You know, if you go out and run 2 or 3K or something, you could sweat up to maybe a pint. So a pint of fluid. So getting enough into you, and like I said before, milk is a really good recovery drink. It rehydrates, it refuels and repairs, okay? So that could be a good option to think about. Let's look at building a balanced breakfast. So I did talk about this, excuse me, that I was going to come back to it. So again, I'll just reiterate why I think breakfast is a very good idea for people. Is it will set you up for the day in terms of giving you energy. If you've got that protein target, you can get a good dose of protein in a breakfast, means you're not chasing your tail all day. If you're trying to get, you know, more fruit and veg in, get a portion of fruit in with your breakfast, or a portion of veg, and that way you've started off straight away. You know, if you leave eating until you know, a substantial meal until 1 or 2 o'clock in the day, you're limiting your window to get these nutrients in. So starting with breakfast can be a really good idea. So if we look at, the first thing we want to look at is a complex carbohydrate. So this is our slow releasing carbs, our whole grain carbs, those ones that take longer to digest and therefore release the energy slower, okay? So things like whole grain bread, or Weetabix, or puffed quinoa, porridge, these are all kind of good basics. But there's lots of other ones you can use as well. If on my Instagram, if you go to it, you'll see there's another round of these options, but I'll go through this one. And then you're adding your protein. Okay, so think about it. Now we've got what makes up the balance. Okay, so we have carbohydrates, now we need protein. So things like we talked about, milk, eggs, yogurt, bringing all those in. And now next we want to think, well, what's the other thing we need? We need a healthy fat. Remember, so there's 3 macronutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, fats. So we need to add the healthy fat. So that's going to come in the shape or form of more than likely seeds, nuts, or if you want to throw an avocado in there. Obviously, if you want olives, or if you had, I'm trying to think about any of the other things you could add there, but these are kind of firm favorites for breakfast. And then the last thing we want to put in is, like, we know we need portions of fruit and veg. So you put that guy in there. Okay. So again, you'd make yourself some nice, scrambled egg, avocado, tomato and toast, or you can have your porridge or your Weetabix with all those added toppings. So just kind of making those 4 rules for yourself with your breakfast: complex carb, protein, healthy fat, fruit and veg. And then you've got a lovely, really nutritious, really balanced meal there. And you can actually probably apply that to nearly all your meals and snacks if you like, okay? Kind of thinking about what makes it balanced when it has all the components there. So quickly, I want to move on to looking at snacking. Okay, so this is because this came up a lot throughout the last 2 lockdowns. I got asked a lot about this on Instagram, a lot from my clients with the teams I was working with. So, people ask, why am I snacking more? Well, first of all, give yourself a bit of a break if you have been. We start 3rd lockdown. This has been a weird 10 months. So we can all just, snacking's not the end of the world, we'll say, but I want to give some reasons as to why we maybe over snack when we're at home, especially. Okay, so poorly timed meals like that. Have you skipped breakfast? Are you not taking lunch throughout the day? Have you been working from home and you're not actually prioritizing your meal times because you're just working through lunch because you're in your own house? Are you getting hungry then? Or maybe it's unbalanced meals. Maybe just take the example of breakfast there. Are you leaving out maybe protein from it and you're getting hungry then? Or is it a poor carbohydrate where it's actually it's high sugar, so it's not leaving us feeling fuller for longer? Potentially then stress, because let's look at it, it's been a stressful 10 months for everyone. We're dealing with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety, so stress can play a big part in that as well. And then it's mindless eating. Are we a little bit kind of bored at home? Are we just you're only going from the kitchen table to the fridge? Are we dealing with poor sleep on top of that? I'm going to come on to sleep in a couple of minutes, but sleep is so important for different facets, but especially for our appetite regulation. So when we get poor sleep, our appetite regulators, so the hormones that we produce when we're hungry and when we're full, they get thrown out of whack. So they don't work as well as they should. And then boredom, of course, big one. Boredom eating, because you're not at much, so you might as well go to the fridge or go to the press. Okay, so how do we actually combat this? How to improve it? So first of all, I would recommend planning, and I don't mean over planning or writing yourself out a meal plan, but actually just thinking, what am I going to eat today? Okay, I have X, Y, Z, and spending 5 or 10 minutes doing that and planning and timing your snacks can have a huge impact then if you actually want to make sure you stick to something. So even like saying you're having your 11 o'clock snack, okay, I'm having a piece of fruit and yogurt, and my lunch is there. So I'm grand. I don't really need anything outside of that. I'm not hungry. And then we're looking at increasing complex carbs and protein with meals. If you find you are hungry, even though you think you're making the right choices, there's no issue. You're allowed to, you've got, you've permission to eat. So, making sure that maybe bulk up your porridge a little bit more, maybe add another piece of chicken with your dinner to keep you feeling fuller for longer. Maybe that's saying your portions might be off. Hydration throughout the day, a massive one. Dehydration can lead to false hunger. So making sure that you're hydrated throughout the day. Distract yourself. If you find that the cravings are coming on and you want to start eating, distract yourself. Go out for a 10-minute walk. Leave the room. Ring somebody. Just if it's just a technique, it's something to try to just completely distract yourself from. Because if you're sitting there and there's a packet of Kit Kats in the back of the press and you've just remembered, you're going to sit there thinking about the Kit Kats until you go get one. So the idea is to go and completely remove yourself from the situation. Portion snacks could be another one, and then removing them from out of your sight. So if you have whatever it is, maybe a bag of crisps or something that you're hankering for and they're sitting out on your cabinet, sitting out on your tabletop or whatever, you know, move them out of your way. If they're not something that you want to eat and you just know you're going to do it eventually, you're thinking about it, just move them out of your sight. Or if it's a case where you keep biscuits or whatever, some other snack, low nutrient food in the house, and you're trying to reduce the amount you have, but they have to be in the house. Maybe you've got like kids or a partner or whatever. Put them in a really obscure place, like in the saucepan press or under the sink or somewhere that's not going to be there every time you open the press to get the tea bags out, you know, make it a little bit more difficult on yourself. And we do encourage snacking. We don't say that you should never snack, okay? Because snacking is part of a healthy diet, but it's just choosing more nutritious snacks, like, you know, a small tin of beans on a slice of toast, or popcorn, or seeds, or any piece of fruit, obviously, high protein yogurt, oatcakes and cheese, like things like this, or making yourself a nice smoothie if you fancy something sweet. You definitely should include healthy snacking throughout your day, but trying to get more more nutrient dense. That's what we're looking for, okay? And having a bit of planning with them. Now, looking at nutrition as we age. Now, your nutrition, again, this is something I'm just going to introduce tonight because I would like, there's a lot to discuss around this topic. It's very nuanced, there's a lot of different things, a lot of different facets and a lot of different areas in this topic. But looking at nutrition as we age, as we go from early to late adulthood, and what the difference is, like why do our bodies change, and the areas that we can do to address that, okay? So when we actually age, when we move from our 30s, 40s, to 50s, to 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, hopefully, we actually burn less calories at rest. So it's not even a case of our metabolism slow down or anything like that. I know a lot of people think that their metabolism's slow when they age. That's not necessarily the case. It's just that we actually burn less calories at rest. And there's a few different reasons why this happens. But one of them would be our muscles in our bodies actually reduce. And I'm going to come on to that in a second, so bear with me. But combined with this reduction of calorie burn, and the fact that we actually move a little bit less as we age, and potentially then consume excess calories. So we actually move around a little bit less, but we eat the same. So it means that we have excess calories, which we then store as fat. And this actually may result in that middle-age spread. So I know a lot of clients that I've worked with, kind of 50 and above, that have gained weight are kind of perplexed by it, because they don't really understand why they have lost, or why they have gained weight, because they feel like their diet hasn't changed at all. But yet the diet has remained fairly, because we're creatures of habit, we're habitual eaters. You know, our diets really don't change unless we do something about them. But, you know, and their diets haven't changed, but yet they've gained this weight. And it's for my job then, it's trying to look at, well, you know, you probably are eating a small bit more, but it's also because you're moving a lot less. And we do this without knowing. You know, potentially for some of us, we've raised kids for 20 years, and, you know, if you're raising a handful of kids, you're going to be moving a lot. And as you know, they grow older, you're not going to be moving as much, and you don't realize that these daily movements have actually reduced, and therefore we don't burn as many calories. So there's many other facets to do with it, but that's just a very much broad overview of how, looking at maybe potentially why we see middle-age spread in older people sometimes. The next one is a big one. It's a huge topic at the moment, because there's a lot of research has come out in the last few years about it, but it's a risk of sarcopenia. Now, if you've never heard of that, and you're 50 or above, do make note of it. Actually, it doesn't really matter. Anyone should be making note of this, because it's going to happen. It affects the majority of people. So sarcopenia is muscle wastage as we age, okay? And how we address this is with paying particular attention to protein in our diets, okay? So sarcopenia is muscle wastage, because, as I said, as we get older, we move around a lot less, and therefore our muscles aren't getting used. And if we don't have adequate protein in our diet, which a lot of adults won't have at that stage, their muscles will reduce, and this puts them at risk of falls. So although it may be a long way off for most people listening to this workshop tonight, it is something that will affect a lot of us, okay? So when we get into our older years and we take a fall, and you hear of elderly people breaking a hip or a shoulder, and this is often because of sarcopenia, because they're not strong, okay, and they have had this muscle wastage. And it is particularly important to pay attention to, because once you've had a fall like that in the older years, coming back from it is very, very hard. And so it's something to be very mindful of. How we address this is focusing on daily movement, okay? So daily exercise, daily walks, doing some resistant exercise, so strength training. You don't have to be down there, you know, slamming massive deadlifts or squats or anything in the gym, nothing like that. You can do plenty of, and there's plenty of strength exercises you can do at home, but definitely focusing on that resistance exercise to keep our muscles strong. And that's definitely something we can dive into if this topic comes up again, because it's super, super important. But looking at then paying particular attention to protein in your diet as well. So making sure you are getting enough protein. Like, and again, you don't have to go out and buy protein supplements or anything like that, but it could be the inclusion, just 20 to 30 grams extra a day. So like the inclusion of, you know, a pint of milk or a couple of eggs a day, or, you know, high protein yogurt will more than suffice. It's just paying particular attention to getting those protein levels up to make sure that you're offsetting that risk of the muscle wastage muscle wastage as you age. Get on to and we'll go through this quite quickly, is healthy eating on a budget. Because again, another kind of barrier that I would get from a lot of people is, well, healthy eating is too expensive, Laura. You know, I can't afford, you know, a €7 bag of flaxseed, or, you know, goji berries or hemp seeds, or whatever, you know, Instagram influencer you saw promoting in their breakfast or whatever it is. Because, you know, when we look at those pictures on social media or whatever, and they're so fancy and they look so well put together, and, you know, you've got these ackee bowls and things like this, it really puts it out of reach of some people, because they think straight away, well, like, I haven't got a clue how to make that, and that looks really expensive, and where do you even get those ingredients? What I want to reinforce is that you don't have to spend a bomb of money to be healthy, and you don't have to have 67 ingredients in a dish for it to be healthy. You know, you can have really simple dishes with condiments and things that or frozen veg and tinned stuff that you may not think is that healthy, but it is very nutritious. And if it means that you're not going to go and eat a takeaway, or, you know, you're not going to order food or anything like that, or opt for, like, you know, frozen pizza or something, then that's, you know, it's better than it's basically better than that. Okay, so the thing that I often put up on my Instagram, and I use them a lot with clients and with different talks, and it's essentially just showing how you can get like 4 ingredients together, and they're very, very quick, they're very, very cheap, and very, very quickly put together can make a really nutritious meal within 5 or 10 minutes. So again, you're taking out 2 barriers there. You're taking out the financial side of it, you're taking out the time side of it, and kind of taking out the skill side of it as well, because these things don't need a lot of skill. So again, it's just to show that if you wanted to put together a really quick food, really simple ingredients, really convenient ingredients as well. So like this guy down here, I get my pointer out again. This guy down here, you've got like microwave rice and frozen veg, 2 eggs and soy sauce, and you've got yourself a really healthy meal there. Again, would it be better to have all fresh veg and cook the rice from scratch? Look, it would be slightly more nutritious, but is the trade-off you not doing it at all? If you have to do that, it's not worth it. Okay, so the idea is thinking, you know, this is the absolute best, most nutritious way I could do something. This is me kind of ordering a takeaway. Where can I meet in the middle? You know, where can I meet in the middle that suits my time, my finances, my cooking abilities, my family's preferences? And that's where you have to start thinking. You have to start being flexible with it. Okay. And just because like this, we take, you know, a tinned tuna and some pasta and sweet corn, and just because we've added mayonnaise to it, it doesn't make it unhealthy. It doesn't take away from the nutrients in these three foods. Okay, and that's another thing that I get with people is, oh, well, that's not healthy, I can't have that with it. You know, adding mayonnaise to something does not make it unhealthy. It doesn't take away the nutrition. If you have different goals, like weight loss goals or something, or you've got calorie targets, then yeah, maybe you have to make a more sensible choice. But this idea that we have that like this, like adding cheese to something makes it unhealthy, that's not the right way, or even soy sauce or cream cheese. The other nutrients that you're going to get in with that more than makes up for it. Okay, and it's all about balance. Everything's about balance with these things. So again, just showing you some ideas of how you can get some really quick, convenient foods, whack them together, and you've got a really, really quick, nutritious meal. All very cheap stuff as well. There's nothing there that's going to break the bank. I think this guy will probably cost about €1.50 or maybe €2 altogether. Again, you're going with, there's nothing wrong with frozen veg. If it means that you're going to get additional vegetables into your diet, there's no issue with frozen veg. And again, just it's to give different ideas. Like, you've got some vegan options or vegetarian options there as well, so to get the different idea of different things that you could have. So again, these are, I do release new set of these every so often on my Instagram if you do want to check them out. But they're very handy. It's all about just having, not overwhelming yourself and thinking that you have to have X amount of something for a meal to be healthy as well. So let's talk about winter wellness, next topic. Okay, so we'll talk about the winter period from like Halloween to Paddy's Day. Okay, so that's giving us a good bulk of kind of when we ease into the darkest months and back out of them again. There's two things that you really see changing. Well, three things, but with the vitamin D we're going to come back to, but it's just to be aware of, this is a nutrient that we really need to focus on during winter. I'm going to talk about it when I talk about supplements in a couple of minutes. But there's kind of two things. Are you eating less vegetables than you do during the summer months? Because I find this is a big one. For whatever reason, people reduce the amounts of, they naturally reduce the amount of salads and things like that they might have. And in turn, people actually generally tend to eat less veg. I know we go with things like stews and casseroles and very kind of, hug in a bowl kind of food. And for some reason, that does translate to less veg intake. And the other one is less exercise. So people tend to get a lot less exercise in the winter as well. Obviously, dark, wet evenings. Who wants to go out there? Can't drag the kids out when it's raining outside and things like that. So this is more to be aware of them. Okay, be aware of this now. And maybe the light bulb's gone off and you're like, oh Jesus, yeah, actually I don't actually get my steps in, or now that you say it, I actually find I do eat less veg. It's something to be aware of during these months, that you need to keep up your habits that you have from the summer. They may be slight and subtle, but it's definitely something to focus on. And like that, if you are getting less steps, try and get some steps in the morning or at lunchtime as well, and getting that regular movement if you are sedentary throughout the day. With supplements, I'm going to talk about this. There's a lot to talk about with supplements as well, but I suppose what we want to say is when to supplement. When should you actually supplement? If you've been advised to do by a medical professional, all right, that's when you should supplement. For whatever reason, possibly low iron, possibly low B12, whatever it is, you'll talk to your doctor or your dietitian or nutritionist about it. If you know you do not eat a specific food that contains a specific vitamin or mineral. Now, what I mean by that is that if you are vegan, it will be near to impossible for you to get B12 in your diet. So you need to supplement with it, but you do also need to speak to your doctor about it. If you don't eat any red meat and you know you've got the symptoms of low iron, then you speak to your doctor about possibly an iron supplement, okay? People supplement very willy-nilly, and sometimes that's not the correct thing to do. So something like hemochromatosis, which is an overproduction of iron, it's a very serious condition, that actually has the exact same symptoms as low iron. So if you then give someone who has an overproduction of iron an iron tablet, it can be lethal for them. So I know it sounds quite serious, but supplements are not something to kind of just say, oh, I'll just have a supplement. It's you're putting it into your body. You need to be aware of what effects it may have, okay? So reasons not to supplement. So don't supplement with anything that says you're going to lose weight from it. It's not the correct way to do things. And yeah, I think that speaks for itself. Don't supplement because you think you have a poor diet. So it's like, oh, well, I don't think I eat enough, whatever, and then I'm just gonna have a multivitamin. That's kind of like putting a plaster over a bullet wound. Again, it's very extreme, but you're not actually addressing the issue. Why is your diet poor? What are you not eating? If you're not eating enough fruit and veg, why not focus on eating more fruit and veg in your diet? So, multivitamins, you don't know their bioavailability, you don't know their dosage, you don't know if it's correct for you. So it's just not, the correct way to approach trying to have a nutritious diet. Again, if you see a celebrity selling it on social media, I think that speaks for itself. Don't buy supplements off people that are making money from them, in terms of like, not supplement companies, but people who are getting paid to promote it. 2 supplements I recommend. So these are the only ones you'll hear me recommend for the general public. Vitamin D. You take vitamin D, okay, vitamin D3 from Halloween to Paddy's Day, like we said. That's when you should take your vitamin D. and then omega-3. So if you don't have any oily fish in your diet, if you don't eat salmon, mackerel, or sardines in your diet, I recommend you get an omega-3 supplement. If you do, if you have those oily fish, 1 to 2 portions a week, you're fine. You don't need an omega-3 supplement. They're super important for our health. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory, for cognitive function, whole host of other positives in our body. And again, vitamin D is very much needed for optimal health. So there's a to focus on. Now, there's specific at-risk populations as well. So vegans, you need to look at vitamin B12 because that's in meat products, meat and animal products, so they don't have that. So if you're vegan, go speak to your doctor. If you're trying veganry, be aware that, you know, you have to have being a healthy vegan is not an easy thing to do. And again, you should have a look at what nutrients may you be missing from your diet. Again, vegetarians, you've got very low animal intake. Women, if you're suffering with a heavy period, look for an iron supplement, but do speak to your medical professional, of course. And then any woman of childbearing age should focus on folate in your diet, or if you're trying for a baby, make sure you're taking folic acid as well. Now, quickly onto alcohol. I do realize we're on the hour, guys, but I'm nearly finished here. I think we all know the damage alcohol does to us. It's just be very aware that there's lots of other areas, you know, depletes vitamin and mineral, it compromises our immune system, which we all need to be kept very high at the moment. It interrupts our sleep, it reduces fat burning and adds excess calories, things like this. So do be mindful of your alcohol intake. Again, I know for some people, it's gone away when people find drinking more than ever because of lockdown. So just be mindful of your alcohol intake. Sleep is kind of the forgotten pillar of health. Again, I touched on how it interrupts if we don't get enough sleep, it interrupts our appetite regulating hormones. We need sleep, okay? We need sleep to repair our bodies, to recharge, to balance hormones, to optimize brain activity. There's so much there's so many ways that sleep affects us, that when we just kind of, oh, sure, I can survive on 2-3 hours a night, you really shouldn't be doing that. Now, I'm sure if anybody has a newborn here, they're screaming at me saying, it's not that easy, Laura. I understand that, okay, but I'm not really talking about people who have to be awake during the night if they're caring for someone else, caring for a child, or caring for maybe a family member. It's not a good enough reason to give up 2 hours of sleep a night because you're sitting on your phone, okay? Make sure that you're prioritizing getting 7 to 9 hours sleep a night. Now, maybe you work fine on 6 and you've got loads of energy or whatever, but more often than not, I'm sure there's people listening to this right now who are thinking, do you know what? Yeah, like if you're knackered the next day, or you're irritable, or you've got low mood, or you just don't have any energy, like you need to focus on getting enough sleep and getting, like, you know, creating an environment for yourself that actually allows you to sleep well. So I'm talking about screens. We are devils for having screens everywhere, okay? And if you do have your phone or tablet in bed, put a blue light blocker on it, okay? So putting a blue light blocker to stop that exposure to you as well, okay? And then if you find it difficult to get to sleep, set up a good routine. Maybe you'll take a shower, bath, or read for a little while. Like, reading is like nature's sleeping pills. If you read until you fall asleep, and get yourself in the habit of doing that if you like that. And then your body will actually start associating reading with sleeping. But it's definitely something that's, I know, worked for a lot of people. Creating the ideal sleep environment. So blackout blinds, a decent duvet, comfy pillows, like invest in a good mattress. If you find that, oh, my mattress is uncomfortable, like, you spend a third of your life sleeping. So invest in it, it's worth it, you know. Making sure that the room is not too hot, not too cold, that that you've got nice blankets or nice duvet cover and stuff like that in the bed, that you've got nice pajamas, like everything like this. A lot of people don't put much into their sleep environment, which I think is a shame. So winding down as well, big one. Make sure you wind down. So there's no big events in the evening that, from about 9 o'clock onwards, everything's going to calm down the house, and you're going to get into the routine of either going to get changed or get into pajamas or start reading or whatever it is. Big one is coffee, guys. I often talk to people who don't sleep well at nighttime, and then they tell me that have coffee at 7 p.m. Caffeine has a half-life of about 12 hours. So, you may have to cut caffeine off at lunchtime. Go for decaf tea even. You know, there's caffeine in tea and there's caffeine in green tea and dark chocolate. So if you're caffeine sensitive, just be wary. I just, you know, I can see people who they have nearly what they call a danger coffee. You know, you have a coffee around 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and then you're awake till 3. So just be wary of your caffeine intake throughout the day, okay? It can be affecting you. And there's no issue with taking a nap. People always knock naps. I have no issue with them. If your body's tired, go for a little cat nap and recharge your batteries. There's no issue with that at all. Quickly onto mindfulness. Again, I'm over time here, so I'm just gonna touch on this. Taking some time for yourself is a big thing. And, you know, mindfulness can be a bit hippy dippy for some people, but I find it's very good. I find it works very well with people that have used it. I would use it myself, just to take 5-10 minutes. And it's about being present. And when I say that, it's just about just being aware of what's going on around you. You're not thinking about, you know, yesterday's meeting or tomorrow's report that's due, or, you know, have you fed the dog or anything like that. And it takes a little bit of time, but I do recommend there's some apps you can use, like Headspace app, and it's basically just it's getting yourself in the moment. And one task you can do, my friends, being really useful, is just belly breathing exercises. So that's, and I'm not going to do it now because I'm over time, but you know, it's about noticing where your breath is, hand on your stomach, taking deep breaths, holding them in, breathing in for 5, out for 5, and repeating for, you know, a few minutes. Doing that a few times a day, especially if you're overwhelmed or you're trying to fall asleep, you know, using it at that time is very, very appropriate. But again, I'm just really quickly touching on mindfulness today. And then the last topic is how to build healthy habits. Now, this one is tricky because this time of year, everyone wants to build new habits. And more often than not, a lot of people will fail at this, unfortunately. It's habits are very difficult to form. And basically what they are is they're a learned automated response. So, you know, like your habit is straight away when you get up in the morning, maybe it's to go brush your teeth, or maybe it's to go on your phone. Or maybe when you're stressed out, you bite your nails, or you go for, you know, the biscuit tin, or whatever it is. It's an automated response we have, okay? So we learn the response, and we call the response the habit, okay? For being either rewarded for the habit. So, you know, when you go for the biscuit tin, you're being rewarded with biscuits, or the reward of avoiding something stressful. So say if it's biting your nails because you're stressed, that's you're putting that energy into biting your nails and helping relieve that stress. Okay, so there's no set days to change a habit. So this nonsense of like 21 days to change a habit is determined by its frequency. Okay, so if you want to change your habit or start a new habit, you've got to repeat it over and over and over and over again until it becomes an automated response. Okay. So the science or the research shows it's anywhere from 18 to 254 days. So again, we can't go by this number of 21. It doesn't really exist. But we look at the habit loop, okay? So we have our trigger, our cue, whatever it is. We have the behavior, and then we have the reward. So, you know, that's just looking at how a habit works, okay? This is how habits are learned. The brain associates the reward with, with cues and behaviors and things like that. So, you know, I'm sure we all have them and we're all aware of them. But essentially, it's very good in this situation to know how the habit actually, serves us. Okay, so why do we do certain habits? What is it like? Why do we, you know, again, if the habit is, say, stress eating, why are we doing it? Well, because it relieves our stress. Okay, and that's if we respond to stress with the reward of food, and it becomes a habitual response. Okay, and then we learn that we can actually manage our emotions with tasty food, and that rewards our brain then. So if you remove that habit, the stress is still there, but the brain will expect that reward of food. So it's very, very difficult just to stop a habit. Okay, same with smoking, drinking, any number of things. Okay, but in order to break the habit, you might find a new way to achieve the same outcome. Okay, so finding a different way to manage your stress. Okay, so the point here is that trying to see how your habit actually serves you. What function does that habit serve you? So again, if it's biting your nails, it could be stress relief, and then that's how you break an old habit. Okay, and if you're trying to replace an old habit with a good habit, you need to stick at it. And most people will give up way too early and not give it time to form. So you need to stick at that. So looking at barriers. So if you want to create a good habit, you need to remove barriers from yourself. So if you want to stop snacking, say, or you want to drink more, or you're trying to opt for takeaway over cooking, or trying to break that habit. With snacking, have your healthier snacks planned for the day. If you're trying to drink more water, have a glass or a bottle of water in every single room for you. Okay. So every room you walk into, you can drink out of something, and that will increase your hydration. And then obviously, if you're trying to cut back on takeaways, plan out your meals for the week. Have the ingredients there. Know how to cook them. Make them recipes that you're comfortable with. Or if you're trying to eat more fruit and veg, it's very difficult. If you want to eat more fruit a day, yet you have a fruit bowl or your fridge, or it's not plain for you to see, you're less likely going to do it. If you get a big bowl,
we're just having a little bit of trouble, Laura, there on your video.
So, folks, slide. So, is that?
I don't know if you can hear us there, Laura.
Yeah. Is that back yet, Stephen? No?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, oh, brilliant. Okay, excellent. Well, I'm just wrapping up now anyway, so that's a good time for it to come back. Yeah, so basically, folks, we're focusing on the basics for optimal health. Just to wrap up what we've covered there. Focusing on the basics, not overcomplicating ourselves, and not overwhelming ourselves. Focusing on that 80-20 approach, so not restricting, having the good, healthy, or the nutritious foods, with the occasional low nutrient foods. And then obviously complex carbohydrates, fiber, our protein, our macronutrients. And when we, nutrition as we age, then coming in, making sure that we're getting daily exercise and protein intake if we're over 50. Reiterating healthy eating, we don't have to break the bank with it. We prioritize our sleep, and then giving a little bit of patience and time for our habit change as well. So guys, thanks for sticking with me there. I did go over a little bit, but I'm happy to stay on now and answer any questions that people might have. I'm going to pull up a few of the questions here. I know there's a few come in, I can go back. Let me see here. Okay, Noam McGurk's just asking, what are your thoughts on low-fat products such as milk, yogurts, etc.? Yeah, so with low-fat milk, no issue now. All it's done is take out some of the fat. It hasn't replaced it with anything, as many people think. Good option if you want to have kind of high protein, high nutrient, but low calorie option. So that's fine. With yogurts, just have a look at you can have a little bit of a label read. So yes, some yogurts have added sugars, some don't. Some yogurts are low fat with no added sugar, and you just have to kind of have a little read of the label and see how much is added into it. I've no issue with low fat yogurts. I just tend to go to high protein varieties. Let me see here. Oh yeah, so Nas asking again, I worry my 10-year-old doesn't get enough calcium. He doesn't drink milk. Other than that, what can I sneak into his porridge? Look at supplements. So any dairy product. So we've got, you can get like cheese. If he's a cheese eater, that's no issue there. You can get yogurts into him. Other than that, go for green leafy veg, beans, things like that, and they'll have calcium as well. I don't know how likely you're to get a lot of green leafy veg into a 10-year-old, but you could try a smoothie as well. Maybe if you could like make him a banana smoothie with milk, that's another way sneaking it into him. Seamus is asking, what's the general view of MyFitnessPal in relation to tracking your base nutrient intake? Is there any tool you'd recommend? MyFitnessPal is fine, Seamus, just you have to be quite rigorous with it. Some of the foods are added in by users and they're not accurate, so you have to make sure it's an accurate addition. Also, don't go by the calories that MyFitnessPal gives you for weight loss if you are looking at that. They're grossly underestimated. They're not appropriate. So it's the only thing I would say. Go and figure out if you're looking at a calorie intake for yourself, to make sure you're doing it off of MyFitnessPal, because their calculations aren't appropriate. But yeah, like I think it's a very handy tool for people if they want to see if they're getting different nutrients or making sure they're getting the right macros. Linda saying, what if the long-term benefits of reducing putting out caffeine? No, caffeine's actually been proven to be quite good for us. Obviously in moderation and not going overboard on it as a stimulant, but caffeine has a lot of different plant compounds, polyphenols, etc. So it's actually quite good for our health, and so really good for performance and stuff. The thing is, it's the interruption of when we opt for caffeine over food is an issue. You know, a lot of people when they're low on energy will go for maybe an energy drink, and we don't approve or think that's appropriate. But you know, a daily coffee or 2 coffees a day, perfect. No issues there. So there's no real need to cut out. Now, if you've got issues doctor recommended from some cardiovascular or heart issues, absolutely you've got to listen to your doctor. Obviously, we're not talking about something different there. What is your view on nut milks compared to regular milk for protein? I'm probably not I don't know if I'm going to give the answer anyone likes. I don't call them nut milks. I'm going to be honest. I just call them flavored nut waters, because almond milk, cashew milk, they're about 2% nut. They don't offer much in the way of any protein or micronutrients. Some of them are fortified with B12 and calcium, and that's great. Fair play. I like to see that wasn't the case a few years ago. They've only started doing this. They're not allowed to call themselves milks anymore, because it's by definition they're not a milk. They're just a drink. But if you are looking to cut out for some reason or another, you're cutting out dairy, maybe you have an intolerance, or you don't like the taste of it, they're fine substitute, but please don't rely on them. Just be aware. What I find is that you'll see people completely cut out dairy or cut out milk, and then they'll go for these almond milks or nut milks or whatever it is. And then they've lost a huge portion of protein that they're getting in their diet and some vitamins and minerals, and they haven't replaced them in any way because they think it's a like for like swap, and it isn't. There's no comparison between dairy milk and oat milk or nut milk or soy milk or any of those. You have to just take from what they are, and they're a standalone product. You don't, if you can actually just not even think of them in your head as a milk, it would be more helpful, because it means that you're going to focus on getting the nutrients where you need to. Okay, so like I said, little to no protein in nut milks, very little in the way of vitamins or minerals unless it's fortified. So if you are drinking almond milk or nut milk or whatever it is, or cashew milk or whatever, have a look at the label and see if it's fortified with B12 and calcium, because a lot of them are, which is great these days. I'm just going to pull up, just bear with me for a second while I pull up the questions from earlier. If anybody else need questions, guys do pop them in there. I'm happy to go through them. Naturally enough, now we go super slow with everything. Okay, so Jennifer did ask earlier on today, how much rice or pasta should someone eat per day? So I think I could cover that when I was talking about a couple of portions with lunch and dinner if you are opting for rice or pasta. Just make sure, if you think about it, if your whole plate is just a big plate of pasta, that would probably be too much. So go by that, half your plate veg, 1/4 rice, pasta, or whatever whole grain, and then your other parts going for your meat or your plant protein area. Helena asking there, how important is nutrition in your 50s and plus? Very, very, very important. Like we discussed there, focusing on protein, but all the other areas that we talked about in the last 70 or 80 minutes. Mark's asking a good one there, how to motivate a family to eat healthy, especially a teenager. Yeah, look, it's tricky, and teens don't tend to want to eat healthy. I remember myself, I didn't eat too healthy when I was a teen. I suppose trying to go with classics, like go with things they like there's not many teens would turn away a lasagna or spaghetti bolognese. Like, you don't have to have these weird, wild, wonderful colors in every meal. If you can make a lasagna from home, and even if they don't eat veg, you can be really sneaky and make the sauce yourself and blitz it all up, but throw in a load of like roasted peppers, carrots, anything that looks orange in the sauce. That's a really good trick I've used before. Blitz them all up, and then they're eating the veg. I suppose it's not to be forceful on it, because the more you tell a teenager to do, the less likely they are to do it. So nearly trying to make them what their idea is half the time. But definitely, look, fruit is most people have fruit, bananas, apples, they'd be happy to eat those. on that. And then things like that, like tasty yogurts and dairy products as well is a good one. Let me see here. Lynn Sinead's asking, how do you know whether you need supplements? Is it worth going and getting bloods done? Yeah, I would say if you're quite low energy and you think like I'm eating okay, but I'm wrecked all the time, definitely go get your bloods done. There's no harm going getting your bloods done anyway with your doctor, just to see where you are, because much better than going out and taking a supplement unnecessarily. If you feel like you're semi-confident with your diet, I would imagine you don't need a supplement. Okay, if you're displaying symptoms, you go and speak to your doctor, you explain the symptoms you're having, and then they'll recommend you to getting blood tests, which I imagine they would. Don't go and get intolerance testing. Your doctor will check you for a food allergy. Food intolerance testing I don't recommend. It more often than not just creates problems. So I hope that helps you. And I do recommend going and speak to your doctor if you do feel you need a supplement for something or another. Raf asking there, what veg should you be eating every day to stay healthy? Lots of different kinds. All the veg that you like and maybe a few more that you haven't tried yet. The more the better. And Brian asking, what suggestions do you have for a high carb meal? I think I covered that, Brian, when we talked about the different whole grains. And asking what kind of diet to help runners during winter months. All of those things that we spoke about. And then making sure you're focusing on fueling and recovery for your runs. Okay, so loading up with loads of good carbs, refueling then with carbohydrates and recovering with protein, and then making sure you're hydrating as well. Okay, so just keeping fueled and keeping hydrated would be a big one during the winter months. Lots of varied diet, lots of nutrients. And Martina asked me there, I have a 10-year-old daughter who we call a sugar monster. Have any guidance, please, on breaking her addiction to sugar? Okay, well, first of all, honestly, I'd recommend not calling it an addiction. Definitely not in front of her, but just not in general, because as soon as you call it an addiction, you think it's actually something you can't change. So, this is it's more habitual eating that we'll call it, or craving. So trying to make sure that she gets a breakfast that she likes. So a breakfast that's full of, like we talked about, that balanced breakfast, if possible, any kind of variation of that. Make sure that she has the option of having, her meals and then possibly a treat after if she finishes everything, keeping the meals quite scheduled as well. And if the case is where she wants something sweet, maybe possibly something like a smoothie with fruit in it. And then if it's still, if sugar is still wanted after that, a small treat. It just has to be kind of weaned out. But the focus is on like the healthy foods first as much as you can. I'm just trying to think. I think that's everyone's questions. If I missed anybody's question, please pop them through, guys. I'm happy to answer. Or if anybody has anything else, thank you so much for everybody who's hung on this long. I know it's getting quite late, but I really do appreciate all your attention, your questions as well.
Thanks very much, Laura. That was brilliant. I know you're always really generous with your time when you do stuff for us as well. So we really appreciate that, taking time to answer all the questions as well. And just for everyone who's still here, I'll send out an evaluation just to give us an idea of what you enjoyed, what you'd like to hear more of. And then next Thursday, we're going to have another session on a more kind of specific topic. So if you've registered already, I'll send you the link automatically. But if you want to be registered, there's no problem at all anyway. But so again, thanks to everyone for coming tonight. Thanks for Laura as well. And hope everyone's well. And we'll see you all fairly soon. So thank you.
Great, Laura. Thanks very much. Brilliant. Thanks
everybody, really appreciate it. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks.